Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, my daughter.
Yeah. Okay. I think before we continue with Hilchos Shabbos, I thought maybe to discuss a few words about Purim, especially mainly this year, because when we're having Purim on Friday, so it's a little bit more tricky than the normal. And unfortunately, it sounds like we're not going to have the regular festive type Purim with a lot of people and a lot of fun with more like with friends and so on. So I guess we'll have special experience from that point of view as well, with our immediate family only. So with regards to the halachic aspects of a Purim on a Friday, and of course we're not talking about Purim in Yerushalayim, which is totally different than normal. It's a Purim Mishulash, it's called, because for them it falls on Shabbos. We may say a few words about that too soon. But firstly, about Purim here. So the main issue of Purim on Friday is the Seudah, the feast. We're supposed to have a plentiful meal. A lot of poskim say you're supposed to wash and have bread. Some say you're supposed to have meat, meaning it's a very special and big meal. And usually on Friday, we don't eat such big meals because we want to have appetite, leave our appetite for Shabbat. We have the Shabbat meal Friday night, Leil Shabbat, and we want to have appetite and not be full as we come into Shabbat, because that's really shaming the Shabbat. To make it almost non-pleasant, or at least not to have the Oneg Shabbos we used to, when we're nice and hungry, and we've got and we have a nice meal. This way, we'll be all filled up and barely want to eat anything. So there are different solutions for this issue. We'll start from the best and then go downwards as we go along. All of them work after all. Anyone who does it in each of these ways that I'll enumerate soon is Yotze, will be okay with the Sudat Purim and with Shabbat, but there are better and less good ways of doing it. So the best way, and this is how Shlomo Zalman definitely guides us, the best way to fulfill Sudat Purim is by having that plentiful, nice size, big size meal with the wine and everything else before Chatzot of the day. Before Chatzot of the day doesn't mean 12 noon. It's the halachic Chatzot. Halachic Chatzot is approximately now 11:45, plus minus. Next, every day it changes a little bit by a minute here, a minute there, because it's built on the 12 hours, exactly halfway between sunrise and sunset, or some say between dawn and twilight, so 3 stars. It's approximately, the Chatzot turns out to be the same. So it's around 11:45, plus minus. That's, by then, you should have had most of the meal, or at least you should have begun the meal. At least to start the meal before Chatzot. That would be the best way to do it. If possible, then even to have most of the meal before Chatzot, that's even better, because the idea is that if you're not eating that much after Chatzot, then you're still going to be in the end quite hungry for the Shabbat meal. There'll be enough hours that will go by without eating much that you'll be hungry enough for the Shabbat meal. You'll eat it delightfully, and as it's meant to be for owning Shabbos reasons. So that's the best way. And then obviously we have the Mishloach Manot, the Matanot Le'Evyonim, the Megillas Esther, and everything else. All has to be accomplished during Friday, and get ready for Shabbat. Finish preparing the food if needed, get ready physically ourselves for Shabbat and have the warm up the food as we usually do on every Friday. Okay, that's the best way. Second best would be to have the meal up to Sha'a Sirit. Sha'a Sirit is actually 3 hours before sunset. It's actually midway between Chatzot and sunset. So it's approximately, again, very approximate, 3:45. If we said 11:45 is Chatzot, approximately, so around 3 hours later, 3:45, no, sorry, it's 11:45, so 2:45, 2:45, sorry. Around 2:45 would be the beginning of the 10th hour. We had the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th hours. That's how we finish the day till sunset. So around then, let's say you can even play it safe around 2 o'clock. That's definitely okay as well. So if you, again, try to finish the meal by the beginning of the 10th hour of the day, that's second to best, but also quite good. Try then not to go beyond the 10th hour of the day, not just to have the first bite of the meal before the beginning of the 10th hour, and then go on and on with the meal, with the Purim meal all the way close to Shkia. That's definitely not the right way to do it, because again, then you're filling yourself up totally before Shabbat comes in, and then you're not going to be hungry at all for the Shabbat meal. Sort of disgraces the Shabbat meal. So if you finish by majority, most of the meal before 10th hour, second to best option also works okay. Now come two more options, which are very unique, very special, that the post can speak about, especially under these circumstances of Purim falling on a Friday. But they're definitely not the best way to do it. It may be the most convenient way, because the first way we said to have most of the meal before Chatzot is definitely quite hectic, quite pressured, because we have all the Mishlochei Manot and everything else to take care of in the Megillah, and yet to be done with most of the meal till Chatzot, it's not so simple, but that's the best way halachically. Now we'll discuss two options that may be most convenient, because it pushes off Sudat Purim towards the end of the day, so that you have the entire day to fulfill all the other mitzvos and prepare yourself for Shabbos. It's almost like saving you the meal, because these two last options are really ways of connecting the Purim meal to the Shabbos meal. It's almost like having one long meal, both put together, and that's what makes it not so recommendable, likely, but it's a possibility. So we'll first start with the option that between these last two options, which aren't good so much on their own, maybe a little bit better than the second. And that is an option where, actually, I don't even know how to decide between the two. Let's say they're equally not good, okay? Equally not the best, not preferable. So we'll start with one of them, and then we'll do the second with that in a certain sequence, right, a certain order. One way is to do like this. One can make Kiddush earlier than Tzeta Kochavim, Shkia, all of that. As a Plaga Mincha, which is an hour and a quarter before Shkia, before sunset, or an hour and a quarter before twilight. It depends on two different opinions. But it's a nice bulk of time before it gets dark. As of that moment, one can light candles and accept Shabbat. We've said that previously, that Tosefet Shabbos, accepting Shabbat early, is possible as a Plaga Mincha onwards. So, again, very, very roughly, if we're talking about approximately 5:20, 5:30 would be Shkia. So an hour and a quarter before is like something like 4:15. very, very approximate. So as of 4:15, one can already accept Shabbat. To play it safe, 4:30, 4:45, that's definitely time, okay, time to accept Shabbat. Now, if you accept Shabbat, you make Kiddush. Kiddush can be made before Mariv even. Like women light candles before Mariv time. And men can as well, without accepting the Shabbat yet if they haven't done Mincha. Mincha cannot be prayed after Kiddush is made or after lighting candles and accepting Shabbat. But the moment you just start everything early and you've done Mincha beforehand, you've done Mincha Gdola, let's say, so you're fine, accept Shabbat early. So you begin your Shabbat meal, let's say at 4:30, 4:45. You begin your Shabbat meal. So you make Kiddush, you make a motzi, lechem mishneh, everything as usual. Now, actually, you're eating this meal way before sunset, which means it's Purim. It's still Purim. And therefore, you can count this meal as being your Purim meal, besides it itself being your Shabbos meal. What yet has to be done to make it a real, to make them both fit together in the same meal? You must add a special food that's lichvod Purim, that's in the honor of Purim. You wouldn't have had that food had it been a normal Shabbat. That has to be done to emphasize that this is a Purim meal as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
So you're allowed to do Kiddush then and eat before you've done Mariv?
Correct. Yes. The reason is, I'll explain it a little further, because you've started more than half an hour before Mariv time even can begin. Normally, Mariv time is Tzeta Kochavim. We see 3 stars in the sky. That's 20 minutes at least past Shkiyah. So that's approximately 10 to 6 now, today.
So when would people daven Mariv? After the Suda, after the meal? Or during?
So you can have it during. Because it's not it doesn't create an interruption to continue eating afterwards. You go at your husband or whoever it is, goes out for Mariv, comes back and continues to eat. You don't need to make a new bracha on anything. You don't need to say Birkas Hamazon before you leave. You just continue.
And is this preferable to doing a breakfast?
No. That's right.
This is
one of the least preferable ways.
Right.
The best way for the Sedat Purim is to be brunch time.
Right.
You settle down with all the other mitzvahs. You've heard the Megillah Esther. You've done the Mishloach Manos, the Matanos Levyonim. Now you're ready for the meal. Then you sit down for the meal around 11 o'clock in the morning. That's the best timing on this time of Purim on a Friday. That's the best timing. Second best is to finish it by 2:30, 2:45. That's beginning of the 10th hour. Second to best to finish it by then. Third best option, together with the fourth, they're both equal, is to have it at the very end of the day. That's definitely not preferable for the other 2 options.
No,
but it's okay. It works halachically. So instead, you have then both meals together. You would have to add a very obvious type of new food that you wouldn't prepare had it been a regular Shabbos. That will present itself. That would show that you're having a Purim feast as well as Shabbos.
Okay.
The challenge about this situation is, one of the challenges, first of all, there's a problem with this because the Yerushalmi discusses the Purim in Yerushalayim actually. They're going to have Purim this year in Yerushalayim. As I said, Purim is Shulash. They're split in 3. They have Friday, 2 mitzvot of Purim, Shabbos 2 mitzvot, and Sunday 2 mitzvot. How is it done? Very briefly. On Friday, they will be having the Megillas Esther. They'll be laying the Megillas Esther like we, meaning Thursday night, Friday morning, both layings, and Matanot Levyonim, to the needy. Those two mitzvot, they must accomplish on Friday. On Shabbat, they read the special laying of the Torah that's for Purim by Yavah Malek in Parshas Beshalach, the end of Parshas Beshalach. And they say Al Nisim, all prayers of Shabbos and all the Birkas Hamazon on Shabbos. That's the only day they say Al Nisim, not on Friday, not on Sunday, on Shabbos, because that's the real Purim. That's the Tetvav Adar. And Sunday, they have the meal and Mishloach Manot. That's how it's done. They split into three. Each day, they fulfill two of the mitzvahs of Purim.
Can I ask a question? Sorry to
Yes.
If you go for the third option, then
Yes.
when you bench, do you also say Al Hanissim, even though it's like, what day do you correspond the benching to? Because if you're saying, by the time you bench, it might be Shabbos, and then you've missed like the benching for. I'll let you answer.
Purim, right? Exactly. That's the next point I was going to talk about. But beforehand, the mere fact that we're sitting down for one meal, and that it should count for us both as the Purim meal and the Shabbos meal, that itself is very problematic, because that's I'm showing now from the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, how come in a Purim like that, the Purim falls on Shabbos, how come you just don't have the Purim feast on Shabbat as well? Meaning that use one of the, let's say, the main meal of Shabbat, the daytime meal of Shabbat, not the Sudat Shlishit, the daytime main meal, use that as your Sudat Purim. Says the Yerushalmi, but then we can't distinguish that it's Purim, it's a Purim feast. It's a regular Shabbos meal. Says the Yerushalmi, well, then add something unique and special, prepare something extra for that meal that you wouldn't have prepared in the regular Shabbos. Says the Yerushalmi, it's not distinguishable enough. It's still hard to tell that there's something unique about this day related to Purim. So we see from the Yerushalmi that it's not simple to combine the two, combine the Sudat Shabbat and the Purim together, even if you had an extra type of food that you wouldn't have prepared otherwise. So that's one issue that makes it not preferable at all to do it this way. The second is what Laura just brought up. The fact that Birkas Hamazon is very complicated, because on one hand, if we consider the beginning of the meal as, meaning we consider that we started the meal on Purim, which is true. We started the meal 4:30, recorded at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That's still Purim. So we should be saying Al Nisim in Birkas Hamazon. On the other hand, we concluded the meal, we finished and we were prepared to say Birkas Hamazon way after it's Shabbat. It's already twilight, it's already Tzedek Chavim, it's Shabbat already. So do we go by the beginning of the meal or by the end of the meal? So, and then if we say Ritzevach Litzeinu, in that same Birkas Hamazon, it seems contradictory, because the Al Nisim is really related to Friday, being Purim. The Ritzeh is related to Shabbat. So we're saying in one Birkas Hamazon that's connected to both days. Doesn't work. So it's a very complicated question. Normally, we go by the beginning of the meal. That's what we refer to in the end of Birkas Hamazon. Where in this case, we made Kiddush at the beginning of the meal, so we accepted Shabbat early. So in the beginning of the meal was already Shabbat for us. So some say that we should mention both of them, Al Nisim and Ritzeh. How is that possible? Because the order in this case is first Al Nisim and later Ritzeh. How come? Because Al Nisim we add by Birkas Nodelecha, by the second bracha within the second bracha of Birkas Hamazon. Whereas Ritzeh is within the third bracha of Bnei Yerushalayim, of Rachem. Rachem Hashem Elokeinu, that's where we add Ritzeh. So we're adding them in two separate brachos, and it happens to be that the Al Nisim comes first, and the Ritzeh only comes later. So it's exactly like the sequence of days. Friday, Purim, and then Shabbat. So it's first and second. So some say it's okay to say them both in Birkas Hamazon. Some say you can't because it's started, etc. It's contradictory. So you have to choose one of them. Some say, most say that it's better just to say Ritzeh and not Alanissim, even though that means that we're going by the end of the meal when it's Shabbat already. But we also set the Shabbat to begin with. So some say that you should say, most say if you have to choose between the two, choose Ritzeh and not Alanissim, which would mean that it's a big shame. It doesn't cancel the Suda being a Purim Suda, but it's a big shame because we only have one day a year we have the chance of saying Alanissim. And we blew it that for the Suda Purim itself, for the Purim feast, we're not saying Alanissim. That's chaval. It's a shame. Therefore, it's another reason why not to do it this way. The very final last possible way of doing this Purim feast together with Shabbos, there's one more way of doing it, and that's called Pores Mapal Mikadesh. It's a concept in the Shulchan Aruch, Reish Ayin Aleph Siv Dalet 271-4, letter 4, where he discusses this possibility. Again, definitely not recommendable at all. Again, all kinds of issues that have to be solved, and it's not simple. But how is it done? By the way, this is more common than the previous one I spoke about, but two of them, both of them, are much less preferable than the first two we spoke about. And the best was to finish the meal or most of it before Chatzot. Okay, what's this Pores Mapal Mikadesh business talking about? So the idea is as follows. It's exact opposite, or I would say somewhat opposite of the third option, the previous option we spoke about. It's still talking about a case where towards the end of the day, you begin your Purim meal. But instead of doing Kiddush and Lechem Mishneh and starting your Shabbos meal, and then within that, having something special, unique for Purim, and then consider it also as a Purim feast, it's the opposite. You first sit down, you wash, and have your Purim feast without Kiddush, without Lechem Mishneh. You just say a motzi on it could be a whole bread, like a whole roll or pita, or it could be a slice of bread, whatever you like. You begin motzi lechem as Purim. So that Purim, when is that? A little bit more than half an hour before Tzeit. Again, if we said Tzeit now is 10 to 6, so half an hour before is 5:20. So you can start at 5:15 even. A drop before half an hour before Tzeit is okay. 35 minutes before Tzeit is fine. So even as late as 5:10, 5:15, even that's still okay to begin your Purim meal. Latest. Of course, you can start earlier, but latest 5:15, I would say. Play it safe. So you sit down for your Purim meal. Now, you go into Shabbat as you're eating, into Shabbat up till the point where it's already Shkiyah, Tzedek Kochavim. So you have to first accept Shabbat early, before the Shkiyah, at least 2 minutes, as we know, Tosefet Shabbos. So you could just say, Reinu Mekabel Atzmi, Tosefet Shabbat Kodesh. I accept upon myself the addition to Shabbat. And you continue eating. And then, well, actually, at any time during the meal from that point on, you could make Kiddush. So what we're doing is the opposite order. We're turning the Purim feast into a Shabbos meal. Without stopping between, without saying Birkas Hamazon in between, continuing to eat into Shabbat with Kiddush. So how is that done? It's called Pores Mapal Mikadesh. We spread a tablecloth and we make Kiddush. What does that mean? It's actually referring to the fact that we must cover all the bread on the table. That's what it means to spread a tablecloth on a table. It means the table is with all the food that was that's eaten that's out there for a Purim meal. Some of them is bread. Some of it is bread. So you must cover the bread before you make Kiddush, because as we said, we don't embarrass the bread. Now we're saying Kiddush when it's out there in front of us. So we cover all the bread on the table, we say make Kiddush. At this point, we've turned the Suda, the feast, into a Shabbos meal as well. So it's similar, but it's the opposite order. The same issues appear with this solution as the previous one. First of all, again, the Ritzeh versus Al Nisim is very complicated. Here it's more probable you should say only Ritzeh in the end because you made Kiddush in the middle of the meal, so you cut the Purim meal out of consideration because you made Kiddush. So you sort of turned it into a Shabbos meal totally, and therefore it's only Ritzeh in the end. So again, you're missing the Al Nisim, which is for once a year, Chaval to miss it. But that's, most poskim say you should do it that way. Plus, another issue with this is that you're eating a festival meal, large, nice meal, before Kiddush. Because you started, we said around up to 5:15. You started just as a Purim meal. So you're eating way past Sha'as Sirit, way past the 10th hour. And you're eating something before you make Kiddush. So where is the whole issue of remaining hungry for Shabbat? Here you're having a full, large meal, or at least part of it, before you get a chance to eat your Shabbat meal. You'll be all full by the time you get the Shabbat meal, the Shabbat meal part of this feast. So that's another issue. There are other issues also. There's another question. What about Lechem Mishneh? Since you made a motzi before Kiddush because you made it as your Purim feast, now you cover all the bread and you say Kiddush, you make Kiddush in the middle of the meal. Where is your Lechem Mishneh? You can't say a motzi again. According to most poskim, you're yotzi the motzi you said before Kiddush, you're yotzi for the whole meal till you bench, till bring us a mazon. Some say that at the time when you're making Kiddush, take out 2 whole chalot, cover them, as we said, pores mapa, make Kiddush, and then without washing, without saying a motzi, because you've already washed and said a motzi for the beginning of the meal for Purim, without any of that, you just cut into the challah, and at least you have the idea of Lechem Mishneh in front of you as your Shabbat meal. Then you have a slice of the whole challah as you would for normally before you begin a Shabbat meal. But some say you don't need that. It's not required. All kinds of opinions there. So those are the 4 ways that one can fulfill the Suda of Purim on a Friday. As we said, the best option is to have the full meal or most of it before Chatzot, before 11:45 or so, approximately. That's the best way of fulfilling Suda, Purim, and Shabbos.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If that's the case and you're having the meal in the morning, is there like a leniency not to have meat as long as it's kind of festive in other ways? Because you could make an amazing like breakfast style meal, which actually like people would enjoy and you would be hungry for, but rarely that include meat unless it's like a traditional English breakfast and they fry up disgusting stuff. But I'm thinking
that's what we're talking about. Yeah, of course.
Is there a leniency, like if you were to have sell it to the kids and say we're going to have Purim Suda, it's going to be like waffles and pancakes and all sorts of things which they would like. It would be like
very amusing, very fun for them.
But it would be missing the meat element unless just at the end of it I said, okay, and now have a sausage.
Yeah, you could, by the way, if you wash, having first milchik and then you wash your mouth, gargle some water, rinse your mouth out, and eat something that's parv and sticky a little bit, like some pastry of some type that's parv, then you can go on into fleishik food, even within the milchik meal. Likely that works okay. How important it is to have meat for the Purim feast. It's definitely brought down halacha that it should be together with meat and wine. Wine, obviously. and also with meat. How important is it? Because, by the way, on Shabbos or Yom Tov, no, Yom Tov is different, sorry. Shabbos. On Shabbos, we said a while ago, we said a few weeks ago, that it's definitely not necessary to have meat if the family doesn't enjoy it. Because we always speak about owning Shabbos. That's what it's meant to be. It's supposed to be pleasure for us. If we don't dislike meat, then it's not a owning Shabbos, so we shouldn't be eating it. So Shabbos, it's definitely okay to have a milchik meal if it makes the whole family more pleased, more happy to eat. On Yom Tov, we should try our best to have meat, actual meat, and not even chicken, red meat. Because on Yom Tov, we say it's chiyuv simcha, not chiyuv oneg, not pleasure, happiness. En simcha ela bebasar v'yain. No such happiness as there is when you eat meat and wine. That's for men, by the way. Men. Women, it says, B'samcha b'bgadim yafim v'tachshitim. B'gadim yafim v'tachshitim. Your husbands should hear this. They should buy you every chag a new piece of clothes or a new piece of jewelry, something of that type. That makes the woman happy. And for kids, B'samcha b'klayot ve'egozim. We wish that would be good enough for them today. In those days, they used to make the kids happy by giving them all kinds of nuts. That would make them happy. Today, it would drive them nuts. But today, we need the sweets and the all kinds of things like that. Chatifim and snacks, all kinds of things. That's what makes them happy. So that's what Chazal meant when they say Klayot ve'egozim. Give them some nash, something to enjoy. Anyhow, so Yom Tov is definitely important, very important for men at least, to have red meat. For Purim, it also says meat, but it's now the reason why on Yom Tov you're supposed to have it, because it's not only for the simcha of being happy, it's representing korban shalmei simcha. There's an actual sacrifice where we used to, B'ezrat Hashem soon again, Beit HaMikdash, we used to sacrifice Shalmei Simcha. We gave a sheep or a calf or something to the Kohanim. They used to slaughter, put some of it on the altar, some of it eaten for themselves, and the rest given to the owner. And the owner would have the meat from that sheep or calf, which had served as Shalmei Simcha. So since we then had to have the meat of our korban, of our sacrifice, therefore we have it today representing the Shalmei Simcha. That's why it's extra important on Yom Tov, on the Shlosha Regalim, first and last days, to have meat. Purim has no Shalmei Simcha. On the other hand, it's not oneg, and it's not even simcha. It says Mabri b'simcha, but it's not from the point of view of shlamim, Shalmei Simcha. So the wine there is meant to be something that people always dine on. That's how you dine. You have wine. The meat. The meat is how you dine. That's how you have a nice, plentiful, big meal. It's usually with meat. I would say that it's definitely better to have, because it's not related to the oneg, to the pleasure you gain. Rather, it sort of also represents the Sudan on Purim, represents a little bit the Sudan of Achashverosh, where he threw a feast for 180 days, and all the nations he was in control of, 127 countries, something humongous. And also, Esther had prepared a Suda for Haman and Achashverosh, only the three of them, when she had revealed, finally, the second time around, she revealed to Achashverosh that she's Jewish and that Haman is out there to kill all the Jews, to wipe them out. And that's when he got furious and he killed Haman and so on and so forth. So it all happened around a feast. Now, I assume that Esther, when she invited them for a meal, for a feast, I'm sure she had a fleishik one and not a milchik one. Achashverosh would not have been too pleased to have some milchik wafers or things of that sort. So I think that it's still preferable if you have meat, but it's not crazily important. The most important of all days of the year is Yom Tov. That's when you should definitely try your best to have meat. As again, men at least be having meat, but all the rest not that crazily important. But better yet if you do have meat. So that's Purim.
So can I ask one supplementary question?
Yes.
Sorry to be.
Yes.
So would it be possible for the children under Bar and Bat Mitzvah to have, let's say, a milky breakfast style meal, excuse me, and then afterwards for my husband and I and the teenagers, they then have to rinse their mouths, eat something parv like you suggested, excuse me, and then have a piece of meat to fulfill the obligation of meat. Would that be acceptable?
That could work. Yes, that could work. Yes, that's okay. That's fine. Feel like you don't want to miss on the yummy milchik stuff, and yet to fulfill the requirement of meat, that would work fine. Yes, and you don't have to bench in between. You can use one netilas yadayim, one amotzin, one benching over the entire meal of both sections, the milchik and the fleishik part. Yes, that's definitely fine. That's written in Siman Taf Tzadik Dalet 494 in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim when he discusses the Shavuot. By Shavuot, we also have this juggling between a milchik and a fleishik meal because of the special issues around Shavuot. So, actually, just thinking of an idea at this moment, amazing how it came up. With Laura's question, it turns out that we know that Purim, the special, one of the deepest parts of Purim is the fact that the Jews in those days of Achashverosh, they accepted the Torah willingly. Up until then, from Matan Torah and Har Sinai that we just learned last week, a week and a half ago, of Parsha Sitro, ever since Moshe Rabbeinu, when he brought down the Torah and they received the Torah from Sinai, till Purim, which was way over 1,000 years later. It's more like 1,500 years later, 1,500 years later. That's only then did they accept the Torah willingly. All those 1,500 years, they felt they were forced to fulfill the Torah. Why? Because when it was given to them at Sinai, it said, "Kafalem hakigigit." Hashem uprooted the mountain and placed it on top of the Jewish people and said, if you accept Torah, fine. If not, I'm going to drop the mountain on all of you and all die. Po tehe kvuratchem. Here you're going to be buried. Here's where you're going to be buried. So the Jews felt they were forced to accept the Torah. Of course, this is only, most probably didn't happen literally. It's more a way of a parable or a story-like form of telling us that we had to accept Torah. There's no choice. Anyhow, so it took them hundreds and 1,500 years to accept the Torah willingly. When did that happen? By Purim. That's when they realized that Torah is good for them. Not only because they're forced to accept Torah, to fulfill Torah. We won't go into the reasoning why Dafka Purim and where we see that in Purim. We won't go into it now, but that's what Chazal say. Hadur kiblo emei Achashverosh kiblo meratzon. They received Torah over again on Purim willingly. So now that we spoke about milchik and fleishik meals that you wash from milchik and then you rinse your mouth and eat something sticky parv that we can get the stuff out of your teeth and they're all clean. And now you start the fleishik part. That's very similar to Shavuot. We also do the same. Some of us, that we have milchik and fleishik one after the other. Of course, first milchik, then fleishik, and some even have them in the same meal. Why is that very interesting? Because Shavuot resembles Matan Torah and Har Sinai. That's Vav Sivan. That's how we receive the Torah, Parsha Sitro. And Purim, so that's when we were forced to receive the Torah. Purim is accepting the Torah willingly, but it's parallel to Shavuot. It's just the opposite persuasion of the Jewish people. Instead of being forced, they accept it willingly. So we actually connected to by having milk and fleshik meals, both on Shavuot and on Purim, with the way that Laura suggested. It turns out that we're doing something similar to Shavuot, and it makes sense because they're both days of receiving the Torah, one forcefully and one willingly. It's very interesting, the comparison between the two. Okay, so that's possible. Yes, that's okay. So I think that's about it. One more last point about Purim. What happens, even on a normal year, it's very complicated, but I'll say it quickly and briefly. What happens if a person wants to travel from Ra'anana to Yerushalayim for Shabbos? They finish their Purim feast, it started at 11 o'clock, they finished by 2, and by 2:30, 3 o'clock, they start their way to Yerushalayim. Now in Yerushalayim, it's Purim that day, Friday, from the point of view of Megillas Esther and Matanos Avyonim, as we said. On Shabbos, they're going to have Vayava Amalek, the laying of the Torah of Purim, and Alanisim. And Sunday, they're going to have the feast and Mishloach Mano. That's how it's split into 3 different days in Yerushalayim. What happens if one of us would travel to Yerushalayim before Shabbat? Do we have to accept upon us the Purim of Yerushalayim as well? So the fulfillment of the Megillas Esther, we did. Mishloach Mano, we did on Friday, because we did all the mitzvahs on Friday. Now what's left is on Shabbat, do we say Anisim or not, like the Yerushalmi would? Do we have to hear the laying of Vayava Amalek, as the Yerushalmi have to? And then obviously, if we stay on for Sunday, on Sunday, do we have to do the feast? And do we have to do Mishloach Manos? What's meant to be done? So I won't go into what it is normally on normal years. It's many opinions. There are like 4 or 5 opinions how to deal with all this. But one thing we could say, is that the moment that we decide whether a person is of the type that's Yudaled, meaning of the town where he comes from, which is Yudaled, which is only Friday Purim, or is he part of Titvav as well? Is he part of the Purim in Yerushalayim, and he must fulfill all the mitzvahs as the Yerushalmi do, Shabbos and Sunday? The answer is, at least according to Shlomo Zalman, I think many posts can hold this way. The answer is that the moment that is the deciding moment, where you're connected to, is dawn of every one of the days. If you're in Ra'anana for the dawn between Thursday and Friday, like that's where we're all going to be. We're all going to be and our Purim will be in Ra'anana. So if you're here, then you're obligated to do the Yudaled Purim only. Your entire Purim is Yudaled. Whereas if at dawn of Yudaled, we don't count the dawn of Shabbat where you are. Even in the case of being in Yerushalayim, we count the dawn of Yudaled. If you're in Yerushalayim for the dawn of Yudaled, meaning between Thursday and Friday dawn, you're in Yerushalayim, then you're obligated to do the Yerushalmi Purim, Purim Mishulash. So even if you head back, if you're there dawn in Yerushalayim, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, you head back to Ra'anana or to anywhere in the country, you still have to fulfill the 3 triangle way of mitzvah Purim this year in Yerushalayim, Purim Mishulash. The moment you're here, you're in Yerushalayim, dawn between Thursday and Friday, you accept upon yourself automatically a Yerushalmi custom. So that's how it works. Coming from here, there, you're only obligated for what's here because you were here in the dawn time between Thursday and Friday. And if you're coming from Yerushalayim to Ra'anana or anywhere around the country, and you were there Thursday dawn, between Thursday and Friday, you were there dawn, so you're obligated to do all the mitzvahs of Yerushalayim wherever you are. very complicated. But that's how it works. I hope it's clear enough. Okay, so that's it for Purim issues, special ones of this year. Now we'll do some minutes of Hilchos Shabbos. Actually, I didn't hear back from you about whether to continue the sequence of chapters in the book or to skip to Maaseh Goy, the way we use the Goy on Shabbat. I think as long as you haven't said anything, if you don't want to say something now either, I think we'll just continue in the sequence of the book, by the sequence of the book, and we'll eventually reach the chapter that discusses Goyim doing malachas for us. So wait patiently for that chapter. So now we're opening a whole new chapter after we've done all kinds of all kinds of random situations on Shabbat. That's the last chapter we did. So now the next chapter, 22, discusses machshirei chashmal. Very relevant, very, very relevant in our lives. Electrical appliances. All kinds of electrical appliances, whether it's lights, whether it's air conditioning, whether it's a galai nefach. How do you say that? When you open the door, so you could tell that someone walked in, your alarm system. Anyway, all these types of electrical appliances, mainly discussing Muktze, can you move them or not, but also discussing turning them on and off, or delaying by a timer on Shabbat itself, what's permitted and what's not. Okay, so the first situation discusses Hazazat me'avreim l'zor gufo mekomo. What does that mean? But first, I'd like to give a short introduction so we understand this chapter well. Electricity per se, what type of prohibition it is to turn on something electrical? What prohibition is it on Shabbat? So maybe someone you jumped up and said that it's the building because you're building a circuit. The way it gets turned on is because you've completed the circuit when you touch the button of the electrical appliance, turn it on and turn it off. That's one thing. That's called bona and soter, which is the way the Chazon Ish felt about electricity, that it's all bona, which is an issa deoraita. It comes from the Torah. It's one of the 39 av melacha, not to build, and here you're building the circuit. Although you can't really tell that that's what you're doing. You can't see anything. But the Chazon Ish is based on the scientists who tell him, physicists who tell him that by turning on or off the knob of electrical appliance, you're closing a circuit or opening one. So that's one opinion, Bonet. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach argued viciously against the Chazon Ish. There was a back and forth correspondence between the two, even though Shlomo Zalman was very young when the Chazon Ish was very old. But still he was on that level to discuss back and forth with the Chazon Ish. In the end, Shlomo Zalman felt that it was not Bonet. Electrical circuit is something, but it's not the actual Malacha Bonet. So Shlomo Zalman concluded, like the Beit Yitzchak, that electricity is a problem of nolad or molid. You're creating something new in the world. Before, a moment before was like a dummy. It didn't work, it didn't function, nothing. Either you turn it on, it starts working. So that's like nolad. Molid, that's like giving birth to something. That's like creating something that wasn't there before. True, this is also problematic. Shlomo Zalman said that really he wouldn't connect it to nolad. The Beis Yitzchak did that, but he wouldn't do that. Why? Because everything was there from before, and when you shut it off, it's still going to remain there. When you turn it on, it's not as exciting as it sounds that you've given birth to something, you created something in the world. It's barely that. But he had no choice because nolad, at least it's nolad. Otherwise, it would be permitted to turn on and off all electricity in the house. And zilut the shabta disgraces the atmosphere and beyond of Shabbat. So he says it's the Rabbanon situation, rabbinic prohibition. The only situation, according to Shlomo Zalman, which is deoraita, which is definitely Torah not allowed, that's when we have a filament bulb with a wire that gets sort of burnt out as time goes by, slowly. That is a real prohibition, deoraita prohibition, because that's hav'ara. You're transgressing one of the 39 malachos by turning on a fire, even though it's only a electrical type fire, meaning the electrons got it, heated up, but it's still a fire now. Now that it's on, now that it's like functioning, it's a malacha deraisa of havara. So, what types of electrical appliances are like this? What type are like that? So, firstly, by the issue of lights, turning on a light. So, when it's a filament bulb deoraita, you mustn't do it from the Torah because of the burning element of it, havara. When it's a fluorescent light, a fluorescent bulb, no matter if it's the long ones that we have in between two, how do you say, the two ends of the fluorescent light, like elasticizes, like feet on both sides. A spring, like a spring, whatever. You know what I mean? Those long ones, narrow. So those are deoraita level as well, because in order to create the gas, to make the gas move and make it light up, you need a havara. You need to create for a very short period of time. You need to create like a fire that ignites the gas. There's a gas inside the fluorescent, and it gets ignited by both sides, and then it lights up. By the way, the fire that started all going almost immediately dies out without you having to do anything. And that's why the fluorescent bulbs are not hot, because they've ignited the gas and then it just lights on its own without need for heat. That's why they remain cold. And the last but not least is the LEDs. The LED bulb is not deoraita. That's only rabbinic, because you're not lighting anything of a fire type thing. You're not lighting a fire in the LED. And if we don't hold the bone of the Chazon Ish, as we said, Shlomo Zalman disagreed, so you're left with only rabbinic prohibition, and the rabbinic prohibition is zilut and shabta. The fact that by turning on lights, even LEDs, it disgraces the respect towards Shabbat. Disgraces the Shabbos, because you're acting like in a weekday, turning on, turning off, all kinds of lights. Too much of a weekday atmosphere, you're not allowed. Okay, so that's for different types of lights. What about electrical appliances per se? Like a fan, like a radiator, like a thing that spreads heat, like a plata, all these things. What are they considered? So, won't go into great detail, but it's a huge dispute between two groups of poskim. On one side, we have Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Moshe Feinstein, which are two huge giants. On the other side, we also have some big poskim. Two groups of poskim. What is their argument? The argument is, if we look carefully, meaning to understand deeply in the matter, most electrical appliances, most of them, not all, most of them, when they're functioning, they're not involved in any melacha. You're not using them for any melacha. Let's take an example. Light itself, we just spoke about turning on a light on Shabbat, or off. When you turn a light on Shabbat, the moment you turn it on, that could be a melacha. Okay, that could be boneh, that could be hav'ara, that could be molid, all the different ways we explained before. But now that it's functioning as something that provides light, that's not a malacha. Even if it's still burning, for example, it's not a malacha because it burns on its own. You're not involved in it. It's just giving you light, providing you with light. So, for sure you can't turn it on and off. That's not the question. For sure you can't turn it on and off. But can you move it? Is it muktze? Let's say you have a fan that's blowing air, and you prefer the air to go in a different direction. Can you move it? You want it in a different room and it has a long enough cord to take it into a different room. Can you move it to a different room? The answer is that according to Reb Shlomo Zalman and Reb Moshe Feinstein and the group of rabbis that's with them, that they consider that as a Knish Machto Le'eter. It's not Muktze at all, because it's not involved in any malacha. Same as a fan that's just blowing air, a light, a radio that's on. There's a radio that's on. It shouldn't be on Shabbat. Let's say it was left on. It's not Muktze, because the function of it isn't a function of a malacha. You're not writing with it. You're not cutting anything with it. You're not grinding anything with it. You're not doing any of the 39 malachos. It's just doing things on its own. Retiring malachos. Providing you with cool air, hot air, light, whatever it is. It's a muktze. Other poskim say no, because it was necessary for you to turn it on. And turning on is a malacha. So it's called Klish Machto Le'isur. It's a type of muktze which isn't so stringent. It's not at such a stringent level. It's like a pen or a pencil that to use it, you need to do a malacha. So here also, to get it working, you need to turn it on, and that's a malacha. So it's called Klish Machto Le'isur. Even though after it's on already, the function itself is not a malacha. So according to Reb Shlomo Zalman and Reb Moshe Feinstein, you can move a working light fixture or a working fan or a working radio, whatever it may be. You can move as much as you'd like to, wherever you'd like, and even to safe keep the object itself. Even at tzorach gufo, you're allowed to move it. It's all davar asur, even if it's for the sake of mechamal etzer, we call it, that it's the sake of safekeeping the object itself, you're still allowed to move it because it's like a knife or a spoon. You can move for any reason. That's what Moshe Feinstein and Shlomo Zalman. Maybe very surprising, whoever hasn't heard this before. It's a big, huge leniency. Other poskim hold that it's Klish Machto Le'isur. You're still allowed to move it, but only it's all gufo mekomo. Only if you want to use it for permissible use, or it's bothering you where it is. Only then can you move, but not to safekeep it itself, the object itself, mechamal etzer. So, for example, if you have the fan on blowing somewhere air, you can move it to a different corner of the room, a different side of the room, a different direction in the room, whichever you want to move it, because you want the air in a different direction. So that's called Tzol Gufo. You're using it for its own, for what it can provide for you in a permissible way. Even if it's bothering you where it's blowing the air, so you can move it away because of its own mekomo. The fact that it's in a bad location for you because you don't want the air blowing in that direction. You can also move it. The only difference would be, according to the second set of poskim, they won't allow to move the fan if it's to safekeep, if it's in danger, for example, if it can break or something, and you want to save it, that you cannot do. Because it's Klish Machto Le'isur and not Klish Machto Le'eter. Shlomo Zalman and Moshe Feinstein would agree even to that. And we'll finish finally with one more point of this type of discussion, and that is the types of electrical appliances that have this burning element in them. The filament bulb or the plata that has a coil inside that's burning. all those, what type of Muktze are they? So it seems like it goes up a level. According to Shlomo Zalman and Moshe Feinstein, it would be Kedushat Isul. And according to the other poskim, it would be Muktze Mas Gufo, be completely not permitted to move them, even at Sol Gufo Mekomo. So you could go on the lenient side easily because it's Shlomo Zalman or Moshe Feinstein, very important poskim. Some even say that they hold that it's Kedushat Eter, even if it has a burning element to it. But some say no, that it's at least Kedushat Isul. But according to the other group of poskim, it's Musa Mas Gufo, which means that you can't move it at all. Even at Sol Gufo Mekomo, even if you want to use it for permissible use, or you want to move it away because it's bothering you, you can't do that. Only with your elbow or with a broom or something else that helps you move it away. That's the more stringent opinion, but you can easily rely on the more lenient one, that it's all Gufo Mekomo for the sake of using it for something permissible. So the sake of moving away because it's bothering you, you're allowed to move them. So just by the way, if you're in a hotel or even at home and you have like an overhead light for reading over your bed, so if it's a LED which has no burning element in it, then all poskim would allow to move it in different directions. Maybe you want to read better, so you want to move it towards you. It has like this foldable neck. I mean this flexible neck. Allows you to move in all kinds of directions. So if you want to read better, or if you want to move it away from you to sleep, you can also do that. But if it's a filament bulb or a fluorescent bulb in it, then according to the other group of poskim, you mustn't move it at all. Muktze Mas Gufo, you can't move it at all. According to Shlomo Zalman, you can, and Moshe Feinstein, you can still move it, because if you're moving it to read better, so that's called Tzor Gufo, and it's only Kedushat Isul, so you're allowed. And if you're moving it away because you want to sleep, that's called Tzor Mekomo. The location is bad for you. You want to move it away from that location, also allowed. So again, we can rely on Shlomo Zalman and Moshe Feinstein easily for any type bulb. Those overhead lights can be moved in any direction, in any way you'd like, in your house, in the hotel, wherever it is. It's not Muktze from that point of view, moving it in different directions. Okay, very good. So we'll stop at this. B'ezrat Hashem next week. Yeah, that's still okay. Yeah, the laning is Thursday night. So Wednesday night is still okay. So we can learn gladly next week, Wednesday night, and we'll continue our Shabbos issues unless some Purim questions will come up, and I'll gladly try to solve them. Okay, so have a great remaining of the week, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Very welcome. Call too. Bye-bye.